time, weather.
Now for the Forge Podcast. Question for you. What's the power of your testimony if it's never shared? This is the Forge Podcast. All right, let's get situated, make sure I'm in focus. I'm not in your shot. Damian, welcome to the Forge Podcast.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm great.
Great.
I am great.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm just really happy. The first podcast we did was with Bob Kelton, and he's 85, got saved at 82, and he looked at me. He's like, you know what, Joe? I'm just really happy with where my spiritual walk is with Christ, and just how simple he said that. I'm like, Bob, I'm going to borrow that line from you because the way he said it was so simple and so perfect. I'm just happy with where my walk is with Christ, where it is with my wife, my kids, ministry. The one thing I have added to his line is I say, I'm happy with where I'm at and I know nothing because God's got so much more. And if I'm this happy knowing nothing, man, it's going to be an awesome journey. So long-winded way of saying I'm doing good, buddy.
Oh, well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. And I'll tell you from the snippets I've heard of his podcast.
Yeah.
Powerful.
The other line that's in the promo was, I was lost and didn't know it.
That one was impactful.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
I know why it was for me. Why do you think that was impactful?
Well, my opinion, and it's my experience as a believer, is once we come to know Jesus Christ, to accept him as Savior and Lord, it is such a significant change in the way we look at life, the way we think about things, the way I try and put things through the lens of how I see things. You look back, and when you didn't have that, when I was years and years ago, dating myself, but was down in I'm trying to think which country it was, but it was in the rainforest of the Amazon jungle, and it was with a group, and it was a tour that about 15 people, and it was the rainforest as you would envision it. Okay. Right? You couldn't see more than about 10 feet or so in front of you, and you couldn't, and the vegetation was there. The trees were all at least 30 feet tall, so the canopies were such, you had no idea where the sun was.
Right.
At that time, maybe this is a good analogy, we were trusting in the guide that had taken us out there. And about an hour and a half into the trip, and I'm not a big Spanish speaker, but one of the women there was from Spain and could pick up a lot of what he was saying. She got tears in her eyes and said, "We're lost." And we spent the next 3 hours traipsing through actually it was more like 5 hours, to the point where the small boat that had taken us was actually on the verge of spending a day returning back to Sao Paulo, Brazil, to reach search and rescue, because this is back in really before cell phones and such. And but the point I was trying to make with what you said is once I experienced that event, I knew what it meant to be truly lost, to really feel like there was no understanding of which way to go. And you could just see in all of us, the hope was waning quickly. There was discouragement with some, there was frustration, there was fear. And it was an experience. I was very glad that it had a good ending, because what they did was they brought.
Well, you're here.
I'm here, and they brought that the ship that we were on. I think you call it a ship. Only held about 20 guests, but they brought it up instead of to get to where we started. We were on motorized canoes because it was too shallow for this ship.
Okay.
But they brought that ship up, and the captain had decided he was going to sit and blow that foghorn for about an hour until it got dark, and then take a full day's steam back to Sao Paulo to reach search and rescue. And I have never equated this with my trust in Christ, but when I think about it, it was exactly that. When we heard that foghorn, finally through the brush, even though at first I sat there or stood there and didn't know whether to go left, right, or straight forward, because you couldn't hear it. And then at a point, we actually were walking in a circle, and the back of the line said, "We're curling." And so it was just an amazing tie-in, now that I think about it, to before that time, I could have said I was lost, but I did not know what being lost was. After that experience, my point is you don't really know you're lost until something radically changes in that way. And that's, I think, as I said, I've just come to realize right now with you, that's how I saw, the change in life with Christ.
That's awesome.
And that's probably why what he said hit me like it did. So this podcast has had great benefit already.
All right, and that's it, folks. Thank you guys for tuning in. Damian Larson, our guest, and that's it.
So,
yeah, I told him, I said, man, 82 years is a long time. You've done the freedom, knowing freedom?
I did that on my own.
Just talking about strongholds, I said, that's 82 years is a lot of time to build a resume of an identity that's not how God created us. Mm-hmm. And so to be lost and not know it, that's where I went with it. It's like we just compound identity and identities on each other as we go through life. And to get to a point, whether it's 42 or 82, you're like, oh my gosh, wow, let me shed some of this and find that real identity. And then I love your story. I mean, you look at we were so lost.
Yeah, it is.
That's neat to have a tangible thing you can grasp to, because I've never been that lost.
Right.
That's crazy. I've never been that lost. Lost, not like that.
I know in my life a lot of times now I use the word misplaced. Kind of like, oh, I didn't lose my keys. I misplaced them. And I even think of that myself, because usually, I mean, you go in the mountains up here, you might not know where you are, but that feeling of absolute hopelessness and not seeing any way is just so truly different.
Yeah.
Not something I would wish on anybody, but
yeah.
It's an amazing experience.
I was filming a movie in Belize in the jungles, and we were about 150 feet inside a cave filming with no light. And halfway down, I just stopped on my way. And this isn't a voluminous cave. This is, you're crouched down walking through this, trying to get back to this little area we were going to film. And halfway through, I stopped and turned my light off just to feel it. And that was, I knew I wasn't fully lost, but when you're first time going in it, you want to make sure you don't take a left or a right, because pitch black is pitch black. And if that light didn't work.
Oh, I agree. I've had the privilege of being in a cave like that, where it's tiny, and you turn off that light, and it gives you real understanding of what darkness is. Because you can put your hand 3 inches in front of your face and your eyes, and you will not see it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
True darkness, man. Anyway, Awesome story.
Thanks.
So what brings you to the Forge? How'd you get to the Forge? What brought you? How long you been coming?
About 3.5 years.
Oh,
now.
real quick, let me back up. I was explaining to my wife who Damian was. She just always wants to know who's on the podcast, and I'm like, hold on, and I pull up the Forge promo video, and I'm like, I kind of snuck him in the Forge promo video. Did you see that?
Well, I saw the promo twice.
You're standing up on stage and you're talking, and so I grabbed a freeze frame. I'm like, this is the guy that I'm interviewing tomorrow. Like, oh, okay.
Oh, good. Well, that's great. I saw it in the service once too.
Yeah.
But that's nice. I'm glad
Sorry,
you got that
yeah.
chance. You digress. I do it all the time. I started coming to Forge about 3.5 years ago, and mine was born out of a later in life difficult situation, the end of a marriage that was not my desire, and a time where God really put me out in the wilderness and helped. Just another experience in life that really helped me to see that in spite of what we go through in life, that our first need has to be our reliance upon Him, and to know that regardless of what I've gone through, it is there is His love, and that, as Romans 8:28 talks about, it's like, and we know this, that for all those who love God, He will work all things for good. And I am in no way condoning divorce. I certainly accepted it. I didn't fight it, and it was a point where I needed to. I had my family to rely on and some close friends, but even then, some of my closest friends outside of my family, and my circle or sphere of friends is small. I always use the example: I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. And so I remember it was Bill Cavness who, he and I grew up as young marrieds in this church, and reconnected when I saw him on campus, and he's like, I think you should come. And I did. And then it's just a matter of, my nature is I want to not just take in things that I do, I want to give. And so it seemed to be a great area, one, to be built up, but at the same time also to serve others, and most importantly, honor the Lord.
Yeah.
So
what was it like coming the first time? I know I've talked to a lot of guys, and I certainly was that guy a while ago too. Walking in, it's intimidating. You don't know what to expect. Are these perfect Christians? Like, how am I going to get involved? How am I going to crack the surface of these other guys, what looks like friend groups or cliques? It's just, is it even worth it? Like, rejection. Some of the stuff that I went through. Like, what was your experience like?
Well, I in looking back at the time, part of it was there was a pain there. So there, for me, was not, and part of it's just my nature, something I hope we have time that I can share a little bit. Part of my nature is I'm very comfortable just with who I am. So I was happy to just sit down and be a part of something bigger, even if a lot of the guys knew each other. I knew Bill. He was there that night, and then it was just a matter of saying hello and meeting the guys. And that's one of the great things about Forge is, and I know I try and do it, is if you see somebody come in that looks new or by themselves, there's no lack of guys willing to reach out and at least say hi, how are you, and go and do that. So that was kind of my first experience.
Yeah.
And so,
have you stayed with the same? Has your table kind of stayed the same in the last 3.5 years? Has it been changed?
I was put in a group with other guys that at that time largely were either going through the exact same situation I was, had lost a marriage, not by choice or desire, even or guys that were struggling in that. And
did Bill kind of put that together? Was there a table that kind of existed
it
like
was,
that? And then he's like, man, you'd be a great fit here?
There was a table like that. It actually, the gentleman who kind of spearheaded that at the time was Maurice.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was put into a group
Gotcha.
there. And honestly, the first night I was willing to, when they asked us to share, it's like I was open to sharing, and exposing vulnerability. And I know it was shortly even after that I was given a table to lead, and that has changed over the 3 years. Some guys have a more transient nature, and I understand that. Yeah. Different stages of life can certainly dictate how much time you have to give to different things, but there have been. I'm trying to think now. Most of my, a few of them were of the level where they're now leading groups themselves, and I was given on a couple occasions new guys. Now the group I have guys now that have been with me for about 1.5 2 years, which is neat. And I've shared with one of the guys in my group who is now being groomed to lead a table. The first night he came in spewing profanity. I sat and just smiled and let him talk. And my first thought, and this is, I love how God works. My first thought was, he's never going to stick, with my group. He may be here at Forge, but this is going to be a problem. And it wasn't a judgmental thing. It was just seeing such a different personality. Yeah. I tell that guy every time I see him how much I love him, because he is now, he's probably about 25 years my junior, but he is one of the guys I would go to now for, in times of concern, in times of joy. So
awesome.
Yeah. So that's that.
Well, let's get to your testimony. I know Robert had said that you were excited to come on here and share your testimony. So
I am. And I guess I have to ask. I don't know. I told you I'm very open to being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I also want to share, because if it comes out, one of the things I love about our church with pastors Jamie and Rustin, are their openness on stage when they talk about what God has done not in their lives, but the love of God, and even some of the things that he's done, to where tears come. And that is me. I mean, that is just my nature. But my testimony is not so much my acceptance of Christ. There's not some profound story there. It was really, for whatever reason, I grew up in a home that really did not, we didn't go to church a lot. There wasn't, but something inside me, I always understood that this world was created by a God. I did not see the randomness to anything, that there was a perfect plan, and I believed that Jesus was God's son and that Jesus came to earth as a man. Now, it wasn't until high school, when I was involved with Saguaro Young Life, that I came to understand really the whole understand things better. That there is an acceptance of Jesus as Lord and Savior, and I did one night in June of 1979, sitting in the forests in California. I poured out my heart and thanked God for my salvation and what Jesus, his atoning death on the cross, and what that meant for me. And I think at that time, at 15 or 16 years old.
Sorry, I don't have Kleenex.
No, I'm all right.
Okay.
I'm all right. I'm used to it.
Okay.
They'll dry up. But, my story that I was hoping to share a little bit predates that and goes back to 1972 as a boy living in Pittsburgh with a younger brother and a younger sister, a mom and a dad. And I experienced, unfortunately, witnessed, did not experience, some physical abuse by my dad to my mom. And it was rare occasions, so it wasn't, and back then, I don't know. I mean, it was not the red flag that you see today. But there was a night in 1972 where I was a light sleeper. I woke up and heard a commotion. And I walked out of my bedroom, and I remember this like it was yesterday, second story of the house, and went into what was a TV room. And I saw my mom sitting there on the couch, all bloody, bleeding from her head. And I had no idea what was going on. And I came over and asked her, and a minute or so later, my dad ran up the stairs, turned, looked into the room. She was on the far end, small room. I was between them, and he looked at her, he looked at me, and I think he came to the realization that what he did was wrong. My mom had told me a minute or two before that he was trying to kill her. And he looked, and his last words to me as a 9-year-old were, "Oh my God, I've got to go kill myself." And he did that night. He left. My mom had taken the three of us out. We hid in the bushes until the ambulance and the police came. They took her to the hospital. I learned later he had used one of those old meat tenderizing hammers to try and bash her skull in. And it was a story that I have shared with a few people, or more people now, but I couldn't share it, Joe, for 40 years. It impacted my childhood as a young boy. I was good at sports and I was good in school, but I would not raise my hand to answer questions, and I never tried out for the sports teams because I was so afraid of failure as a boy. And I it resonates very well to me when Jamie has talked about in the message about when he was younger, the whole idea of counseling. That in the 70s, that was not something that was necessarily looked at as a positive. And I know my brother has always said, I don't know why our mom didn't get us counseling. But I didn't get counseling until after I was in my mid-50s. And one of the things that I learned from it was that the story and what I went through, you have to go back and put 100% faith in that verse that I shared, Romans 8:28, that in spite of what I went through, that trauma as a boy that I know impacted me, that there was a story there that God was going to use for good. And he has. And over the years, some of the characteristics that I believe were built in me because of that, by him, were, I have a deep sense of compassion for people, especially the weak or the hurting. I have a very high protective nature when it comes to women. And I have a desire. One of the things that is important to me is I look in little situations like going into Circle K to get a coffee or into the grocery store for the opportunity to say a kind word to somebody working there, especially if things look hard, because I spent almost 40 years living with a pain that was easy for me to hide, based on smile abilities and things like that. But and I shared this with my group a year or so ago, the guys, and there's only one or two of them left in the group. It's a new group, and one of the guys is on me almost every week. He's like, I think you need to share your story again. I think people need to hear that. And it's not in any way a woe is me or a, feel for me. It is, what I try and convey to people is God will use anything and everything if we allow him to build us, especially in that you look at Forge, what we stand for, or what Forge stand for. It is sharpening, taking steel, putting it into a fire, 1,200 degrees, right? And then you take it out and you pound it and you pound it and you pound it. And it goes from being just a piece of worthless steel, to what could be a beautiful sword. And my hope is that in sharing some of that, especially guys will understand, we might want to shake our fist at God. And I had a counselor that told me, it's like, you can shake your fist at God. He's got big shoulders. He can handle it. But it's, where do we go with that? And are we willing to trust in what he's doing in our lives, even if it is something that we don't like at the time? And that's the story I wanted to share.
Thank you for listening to the Forge Podcast.